call the meeting to order, and we'll,
Yep.
I think minutes is going to be postponed as well.
Okay.
So,
All right, so time being 7:02, I'm going to call the January 18th public hearing of the Franklin Community Preservation Committee to order. So I think we'll go right into our public hearing. Jamie, if you have anything to say.
yeah, just really quickly, Mr. Chair, thank you, and to all the folks on the committee and the folks who turned out. Just for the record, this is the second public hearing by law. For the folks that weren't here last time or are listening from home, the statute explicitly states that the Community Preservation Committee has to have a required one public hearing a year. I think as this gets rolling, as I mentioned last time, most communities just have that public hearing, but they kind of continue a rolling basis throughout the year. But obviously, being the first time we've ever been through this as a community, all of you thought it would be prudent to have not one but two public hearings, especially at the initial phase. So other than that, Mr. Chair, I'm happy to answer any questions that folks have. And I would just turn it back to you to take any comments from anybody here, in person or on Zoom.
Absolutely. Before we get started, any comments or questions from any of the members? Excellent. Seeing none. Is there anyone in the audience here in person who would like to say anything at our hearing? Yeah, yes, you may in the front. Please go. Jamie, are both microphones working?
They should be.
All right.
All right. Can you guess what I'm here for?
No.
Softball.
I'm the
I'm
Pickleball Wizard.
All right, and please state your name and address, ma'am.
Sure. Amanda Grow, Chilmark Road, and my friend Kim Sparks here is also Jefferson Circle. Franklin, both Franklin. Jackson Circle, Jackson, not Jefferson, I'm sorry. Jackson.
Could you spell your last name, please?
G-R-O-H.
Okay, thank you.
And Sparks, S-P-A-R-K-S. All right. So first of all, thank you for having two meetings because I wasn't able to make the last one, and thank you for having me here today. We're here today, obviously, to promote pickleball within the Franklin community. We're actually here to promote more courts because Terry Antilello has done an amazing job of getting pickleball into the community and everything. So I just have my notes here. Pickleball is the fastest growing sport out there according to the sports and fitness industry. The USA Pickleball Association has actually said that it's growing at 600% for participation rate. Pickleball within Franklin is growing, as I said, thank you to Terry and to Ryan for allowing us to have the pickleball courts here. Terry was hired in 2019, as you probably know, and since then, she has so many people, she has to turn people away from the classes and from the organized play. She said that she has enough people on the waiting lists for us to have a whole nother class, but there's not enough space for us to have that. Pickleball is a sport for all ages. It's a sport for, I've seen people out there as young as 5 years, and you see people out there as, in their seniors and their 90s. So it's a great sport to get family members, to get socialized, it's a community sport. It's also taught in schools, in the Franklin Public Schools. So as they teach more and more students, more and more people are going to be coming out to play. So we are going to need more space. It's an affordable sport. It's under $35 to get a racket. So almost anyone can play. It's not, a sport that costs thousands and thousands of dollars to play. So you're going to see more and more people coming out to play. Right now, as you know, Franklin currently has 2 courts. I feel as though we've outgrown that personally from my experience. There are 4 people usually per court, which means there are 8 people. I've seen 8+ people waiting for
recording in progress.
Sorry about that. Go ahead.
That's all right. I've seen 8+ people waiting to play at times. As a matter of fact, you see people pull up, look over, and just keep driving on, and we end up going to other towns to play. Limited court availability also causes the more, less diversity in the levels of play. So if we have more courts, we're going to be able to have more diverse players. People are going to stay in Franklin to play. I have a handout here, actually. May I?
Absolutely. Yep.
Thank you.
And I actually, Kim, do you mind? Thank you.
Oh, great.
So this handout that she is handing out is towns comparing Franklin to other towns in Massachusetts that have courts.
Thank you.
So the first column shows the town. The second column shows the population. The third column
Thank
shows
you.
the number of pickleball courts outside. The fourth column is the number of pickleball courts inside, and the total number of recreational courts. So as you can see, Franklin is the third from the bottom, with only 4 total courts, 2 outdoors and 2 indoors. So if you look at that compared to the other towns, I just feel that it's, we do definitely need more to keep up with the other towns. From my experience in regards to location, I would propose that it be at King Street as opposed to another place in town. And the reason for that, my personal experience playing, it's a community sport, it's a social sport. I've met so many people playing, and the more people that you have in one place, you end up playing and rotating out with other people as you're playing. So it makes the Franklin community stronger, and it makes you more, you go through town and you see everybody, you know people, and people love to come to Franklin. I came here because of the community. It will show that we have a community here in Franklin. It will enable more people to play. It'll also, like I mentioned, allow for more diversity within the players. So, as I close, with the population of picklers, like myself, my husband said, don't say that, please don't say that. I said it. Growing compared to other towns in Franklin, I really feel that we need to have more pickleball courts. Kim, do you have anything else that you want to share?
No, I guess just to reemphasize, I think some of the points, I think it is the range of the citizens that it includes. Like I said, it's being taught in the elementary schools, it's offered at the rec center for adults, and even the senior center. So I do think it does help support the whole community, and it is affordable, like Amanda had mentioned. So I think those are important points, as well as it's just any kind of exercise is just good physical and mental well-being for the community. So, and I agree with her, I think that we've outgrown the two, because when we go and we come with a big group and there's a family with playing with a little kid, you don't want to say, I'm sorry, this is reserved, can you please leave? You feel really bad for that because they didn't know you had to reserve the court and there's only 2 courts, and you want the kids to be able to play something new as well. So. Yeah. I think Amanda covered most of the facts already, but just wanted to say a few words. Thank you.
Thank you for having us. Any questions?
Excellent, thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments from the committee members?
Yeah, through the chair, I have just a couple quick things.
Yes,
I'm relatively uneducated about pickleball, so forgive me.
That's all right.
Do we have any kind of estimate of how many pickleball players are active in this town, or would be active?
That's a great question. I can follow up and ask Terry. She would know very well. I mean, do you have any idea?
I don't really know how many people have participated in the recreation classes
Right,
that
right.
are offered by Franklin. As a general, we have those numbers. Like I said, I know it's taught also at PE and schools. So we are training and educating children how to play, and they are taking up some, the courts with their parents.
And I'm assuming there are peak times that these courts need to be used?
So it's really hard for professionals like ourselves to get on because we have the weekends or we have the nights, and in the winter the nights are short and in the mornings there are people there. So it's really hard to get on especially for professionals, working professionals.
Pickleball professionals?
Pickleball wizards.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to make a comment, if I could, from the Recreation Board. Yeah, I'll follow up with Ryan Jetty at our next Recreation Board meeting and just see what we can come up with as far as pickleball courts. He did address this issue at our last meeting. And courts are pretty expensive. I mean, they're not,
Yeah.
but we certainly can look into it
In
and
my-
discuss it and see what we can do.
I appreciate that, I really do. And
So-
when I looked in my research, and, my research, it was, you probably have done more research than I have, and you've had the courts built. But what I saw was that it was $22 to $40 per square foot to build a pickleball court. So, and I know Medway just had 4 built, so you might be able to check with them too, so.
One
I
last,
think
sorry.
Ryan has a handle on this, and he knows
I'm
what
sure
they
he does.
cost, and he
He's-
knows what we possibly can do, so.
Jamie, did you have something?
Yeah, through Mr. Chair. I was just going to say, the courts down in King Street, we successfully lobbied the state a few years ago, and that court down there was approximately $200,000 for the courts that are down there now.
Yes.
That was in 2019.
Excellent. And Rick, were you?
just one more question. Do we have any idea how much it costs to maintain a pickleball court from a monthly, yearly basis, whatever? Or is it too new to know that?
Jamie?
Mr. Chair, it's too new to know. We haven't had to replace any cracks or, any other infrastructure issues because it's so new. But I would imagine it's probably similar to any other basketball court and whatnot, where usually we come back every 10 or 15 years and do repairs somehow, some way. Through you, Mr. Chair, I think Ryan Jetty is on the call, if he's able to.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Ryan?
Brian, I see your hands raised. Do you have anything to contribute?
Hey, Ryan?
Got his hand raised.
Looks like
He's not
unmuted.
muted either.
Maybe a coffee break.
Yeah, could be.
Well,
Yeah,
I'll
Ryan,
say
no.
something. The other thing, too, is, I think Ryan mentioned this as well. You mentioned have pickleball courts all at King Street. I'm not sure if that's something we would be in favor of. I mean, I think we like to actually have certain types of things located at different areas of town from a recreation standpoint. I don't think we'd want all our pickleball courts at King Street. But I could be wrong. But I think we usually like to have, something down on Lincoln Street, something at Fletcher Field, just to move things around and give people from different parts of town access to those facilities.
So is it mainly, and if you don't mind me asking, am I ask a question? Sorry.
Sure.
Yeah, of course.
Is it mainly due to, so that other people can have access to the courts? Is that
I
why?
think that part of the philosophy would be, so it wouldn't be all in one location, to spread it out so that
Yeah.
people that live down a certain, wouldn't have to drive all the way to King Street
Yep,
necessarily, but again, it's something to be discussed.
yeah, and I hear what you're saying, and from the pickleball, my experience, I think that it would be better to have them all in one place so that you can rotate and you have more diversity within the players.
Okay. That's something I think our recreation director will address.
Okay, great.
I'm
Thank you.
Sure he's
Yeah,
not
thanks for
on.
input. Any other questions or comments from the committee? I was just saying, I had no idea there was a USA Pickleball Association.
Yes.
That's exciting.
Yeah, so you all should come down and play with us sometime. It's a lot of fun.
And also, a question, you mentioned there are 2 indoor courts as well?
Yes,
Are-
at the recreation
At
center.
at the Recreation Center, okay. And Jamie, do we know if there's, and again, this is a question for Ryan later, difference in cost, or is there a difference in size where indoor compared to outdoor? And again, I've never played pickleball, so I'm sorry, but I look forward to trying at some point.
Yes, you should.
I think, Mr. Chair, I don't believe there's a difference in terms of the cost or the size of the courts. I think they're all the same. One's just indoors and one's outdoors. I see Ryan's continually trying to get on.
Yeah, sorry, guys, little technical
Oh.
difficulties.
Hey, Ryan, how are you? Yeah, you weren't, yeah. What,
Hello,
yeah,
Ryan.
Sorry about that.
some stuff
Just
you wanna
wanted to
add?
answer a couple questions that Amanda had presented. In terms of the number of players that are active in town, it's really difficult to estimate. I mean, we know how many players are in our classes every session. but we don't know how many of those players are repeat players. So I'm guessing it's probably somewhere in the low hundreds, maybe 150 to 200 active players that are residents of Franklin. We do have a lot of non-residents that also come and use our courts because, as she alluded to, there's not a court in every town. So it's just hard to do that. We don't have a tally every time somebody comes to play. In terms of peak times, that was also, we're seeing that on Saturday mornings is where we get most of our play at King Street Memorial Park. So weekends, obviously, because people are working during the week. And then, you know, we don't do any evenings because obviously we don't have lights at these courts. We'd love to, but there's certainly a need for more courts in town. There's no question about that. I think when we built these courts a few years back, we were still kind of part of the learning curve. We didn't know how popular it was going to be. And it's really, it's taken off in Franklin and in every community for that matter. In terms of maintenance too, I know Rick had brought up maintenance. It's really early for us to gauge what kind of maintenance that will go into these courts eventually when they do. But the reason why they were so expensive, Jamie, I think you remember we did post-tension concrete, which is a lot different than our asphalt courts. We're doing a lot more of that. Carlos from DPW and myself believe that to spend a little bit of extra money on the post-tension concrete, we're going to get longevity out of the courts, and they're going to get at least 20 years of play before we have to do them. We will need to repaint them and touch up the lines and whatnot, but the surface itself is made with rebar, cured rebar underneath that concrete, so they should last a long time. So just wanted to answer those questions.
Thanks, Ryan. Great.
Excellent. And Ryan, if I have a follow-up question, if you don't mind. In terms of I know you just said, you know, don't know what the maintenance costs to be over time, but are there any projections or estimates as to whether or not the post-tension concrete lasts longer indoors as opposed to outdoors because it's not being exposed to the elements, or do we not, is that a factor at all, or do we just simply not know yet?
Yeah, well, the indoor courts, typically you wouldn't use post-tension concrete. The reason why you'd use the post-tension concrete is because of the, you know, the cold weather and the shifting. The ground moves a lot on outdoor, whereas indoor you're seeing a lot more like sport court or like a rubberized, a poured-in-place rubber surface. So the court indoor naturally are different than your outdoor play courts.
Okay. And were those cheaper were the indoor ones cheaper because of that?
You know, Mike D'Angelo would probably have a better idea of what he spent on our indoor gym. But what it was is we had a concrete surface underneath it. It wasn't post-tension. And then what they did is they poured a rubberized, I'm thinking it's like an epoxy or something. It's more of a rubberized surface on the inside. So I think the indoor, yes, I think that would be more expensive to do an indoor court than it would an outdoor court.
Okay, well, that's good to know. Thank you very much, Ryan.
And if you don't mind
Yep.
me just jumping in there, the indoor courts are also used for the basketball indoor and the volleyball that's played there. So it's all one court, but with two pickleball courts. So.
Okay, well, that's good to know. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, and just to follow up too, our indoor court it's not ideal for competitive pickleball. The wall is very close to the back end line, and so, we can accomplish a game and play in there, but I think, as Amanda would probably vouch for me on this one, it's not ideal in terms of how close the back wall is to the play. We have had people bumping into the wall when they're playing, so
Okay.
we can play, but it's not ideal.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Wayne?
Yeah, I think, like I said before, we can discuss this at our next Recreation Advisory Board meeting and just see what we can do
I appreciate that.
and
Thank you.
follow up on that.
All right, any other comments or questions? All right, well, thank you very much,
Thank
Amanda
you.
and Kim.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Amanda.
All right, any other members of the audience here who are present who would like to say something?
Hello, Mr. Chairman. My name is Shannon Nisbet. I'm the Veteran Services Officer in Franklin. I'm here tonight to talk about our monument restoration project.
Okay.
In 2020, 2021, my predecessor Dale Kurtz got the ball rolling to restore our town's 11 war monuments. The first project was replacing the concrete bases for the 4 monuments on Main Street, which include the Gettysburg Address Monument, Persian Gulf Monument, Spanish-American War Monument, and Revolutionary War Monument. Now that that project is complete, we're looking at next steps. All of those monuments need to be cleaned, reconditioned, with protective coatings added. In addition to that, we've also had appraisals on the Civil War statue and World War I monument, otherwise known as the Doughboy. Of those 2, they're both more expensive than the other projects, and we're especially anticipating high costs in restoring the Doughboy. The biggest issue is there is water leaking at different points where the soldier's helmet is and the soldier's neck, leaking into the statue and exiting at the end of the rifle. One contractor who looked at this monument was unable to make a bid because they couldn't assess what structural damage might have resulted from the water. And they recommended contacting the company that restored Canton's Doughboy, which that process is in the works. I've reached out to them to try to schedule an appraisal. We also had another assessment of this monument. It was very detailed, very thorough. It did not assess the potential structural damage, but it went into detail about how the bronze needs to be cleaned. There's pitting from different soluble materials in the rain, from car emissions. There's discoloration. And so the bronze and the granite benches both need to be cleaned and restored and protected. It's important this work is done in a timely fashion, or this monument, as well as the other ones that need similar cleaning and restoring. It's very important that this is done in a timely fashion to prevent further damage to these very important historic memorials for the town of Franklin. I know everybody sitting here knows what a rich legacy these monuments provide for our town. They're used for educational purposes. Kids come on school field trips, scout troops. They honor our veterans and all those who have served and their families. Combined with the Veterans Memorial Walkway, it just makes such a moving historic area for our town at the Common. So we may be seeking Community Preservation Act funds to help pay for the World War I monument restoration in particular, depending on what further estimates show the structural damage might be. The one estimate that we had for the cleaning and restoration was $26,000, but we're anticipating that the structural damage would cost a lot more to fix. And so this is just for the World War I monument. For the other memorials that we have estimates for, the 5 others, those appraisals range from $12,000 to $20,000 total, depending on the contractors we use and the final costs. I also would like to note that not all of our monuments have been appraised. They will need cleaning, they will need maintenance, and these include the monuments that are most of the ones in the plaza area, including the World War II monument, Vietnam War and Korean War monuments, and the Operation Iraqi Freedom and Operation Enduring Freedom monuments. So I'm hoping that if we do need the additional funding, we're looking at a variety of sources. We have a ton of support for Veterans Affairs in Franklin from the town, from the community. We have at least one civic organization that is going to have a fundraiser for monument restoration. We have some funds in our veterans funding, and are also hoping we may get some capital funding. And we're also hoping that your committee may be able to support us if the need is there. And last but not least, just again want to stress the importance of the timeliness of these repairs. So the monuments do not continue to deteriorate, so we don't incur additional expense by waiting too long, and hopefully we wouldn't have any irreparable damage. Do you have any questions?
Oh, well, thank you very much, Shannon. Any questions from members of the committee?
Yeah, just real quick.
Wayne?
So you do have, estimates and prices and everything?
We do,
Has that been
but
finalized yet, or you're still working on it?
still working on it. We have some, but especially for the World War I monument, we need to get at least one more estimate for the structural damage, and actually for the formal bidding process, we're probably going to need a few more estimates for that. And I'll work with our town purchasing agent to get those estimates and get some referrals for some other contractors.
So obviously there's a time factor here, because these
Yes.
things are deteriorating quickly.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So it asks to Chair the Jamie, so what's your take on this? How would we, I mean, obviously, there's a time element here. I mean, things are deteriorating. What do you think?
I think that there's a few balls in the air. Number one, through you, Mr. Chair, first of all, we fully support all of the restoration of all the memorials up there for many of the reasons that Shannon did such a great job articulating a few moments ago. Her predecessor, we were aware of the needs. We were working when Dale retired. We applied for a grant through the state, and we were not successful on this round, which was a small amount of money. Part of the biggest issue here is just timing and coordination. As Shannon mentioned, we don't really want to wait for the Doughboy in particular. And so I have set aside, earmarked right now in our capital plan to go before the Finance Committee in a few weeks, some funds to do the Doughboy. But as I think Shannon pointed out, one of the tricks right now is kind of like accurate cost estimates. It's highly specialized work. We actually had some good estimates already, but we're fine-tuning those because the labor market is so difficult right now. To hire anybody to do any type of specialized work is very complicated and could be very expensive. So I don't want to come before a committee here or use free cash and appropriate a certain amount of money and then realize we don't have enough when the bids come in, and then we've got to go back and wait another year. So my thought right now to the CPC is there's kind of two different projects. There's the Doughboy, which is a more extensive and expensive project, and then there are kind of all the other monuments that are a little smaller in size and maybe don't have as much of the preservation work or as intensive of preservation work to do. And I'll be meeting Shannon later this week, and she has reached out to some other bidders to see if we can get an accurate cost estimate. What I'm thinking right now is to actually use the FY22 capital plan through free cash and appropriate a certain amount of money that I feel like is going to be plenty in order to get the Doughboy Monument project moving. In the meantime, we can continue to do appraisals and get better cost estimates on some of the other monuments, and then come back to CPC at that time when we do a CPC plan later in the spring or over the summer for next fiscal year. And once we've got a more accurate assessment of the costs, we can come back to this committee, and I'm just making up a number, say it's another $30,000 or $40,000. we can come back to the committee for the second portion of the monument project. One thing I would note really quickly in conclusion is maintenance costs, annual maintenance costs cannot be used CPC money. So that is something that I know Shannon has already coordinated with the DPW director on, and the DPW director is putting into his budget proposal, I believe it's $5,000 for the annual maintenance of those memorials, so that we won't get behind ever again in the future, and it'll hopefully be in the DPW budget. Just for clarity, just to make sure everybody knows, CPC monies for the folks at home cannot be used for annual maintenance. So you can't use it for annual maintenance of mowing lawns, cutting grass, typical watering, those types of things. Those all have to be out of the operating budget. I hope that answers the Wayne's questions.
So
Yeah.
you would use money from the town budget that you've allocated for this?
I'd use money from the operating budget for the maintenance. We would invest some money from the FY22 capital plan toward the Doughboy World War I Memorial.
Yeah.
And then when we have a really good sense of what the cost is going to be for all of these, we'd come back to CPC if needed. If the estimates are way over what we think they might be, we'd come back to CPC and ask for a request of a future appropriation from the historic preservation account toward that project. So we do, as she pointed out, we do have a few options. It's kind of just, it's kind of
We
putting the horse before the cart, making sure we go from the right, we have a couple options.
Yeah.
What my fear is that we get it all embedded in CPC, and then for whatever reason, the CPC plan takes a little longer, and then we've missed another season.
Right.
Whereas I can get, in all likelihood, with the approval of the council, I can get the Doughboy statue funding appropriated probably in the next couple months. And we might be able to get a contractor on board for the summer. And as Shannon knows or has learned, getting contractors on board right now is extraordinarily difficult for any project, for almost anything. So I just want to get a head start to get somebody lined up for the summer so we can make sure that the work's, or in the fall, so the work can be done.
Yeah, but if we can't use the CPC funds for maintenance, what do we use them for?
So the work that Shannon is describing is not maintenance. It's actually a structural capital project to the structure of the whole monument, or all of the monuments, as a matter of fact, right? It's all the
Right.
monuments. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
A lot of them, they need cleaned, deep cleaning, and it's more than just maintenance, definitely.
I mean, there's cracks in a couple of them, and there's
Okay.
foundations need to be solidified, and some of that stuff went.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yep.
Phyllis?
Jamie, there is another grant out there that's going to be, I think the deadline to file it is the end of March.
Mhm.
And it is for historical preservation, looks like, I don't know where it's from. I think it's from the Mass Historical Society.
Oh, yeah.
So I could give Shannon the card, and she could take it from there.
That sounds great. Thanks, Phyllis.
Yep.
Thank you, Phyllis. That would be great.
Anyone else? I have a couple questions. Shannon, you mentioned this project to start the restoration. This got kicked off in 2020 or 2021, you said?
2021, I believe.
Okay.
And my predecessor, Dale Kurtz, worked with Brutus Canareggi from
Yeah.
DPW and their department, and with other areas of the town as well.
Sure.
To start getting those initial estimates. And they did get some of the work scheduled before I started my position. Those concrete bases were replaced for 4 of the monuments on Main Street.
Okay, excellent, thank you.
Yes.
And prior to that, do we know when the last time comparable restoration work was done to the monuments, or when they were looked at before, this project was begun in 2021?
That's an excellent question, and I'm not sure. My understanding from my predecessor is that the monuments did not have any sort of maintenance or restoration work for a long period of time,
Yeah.
and they fell into the condition they're in now. And that's why he thought it should be a top priority to get a handle on the situation.
Yeah, that sounds like it certainly explains the state that the Doughboy is in and the immediacy of the issue. So, wow, yeah, thank you for bringing this to our attention.
Great.
Right. Thank you all so much.
Thanks, Shannon.
Yeah.
Is there anyone else who's here in the audience who'd like to speak?
Hello, my name is Rose Detterman, and I live at 86 Palomino Drive. And today I was hoping to share, I'm a graduate student at Boston University, and I was hoping to share some insights that I had from a project that I worked on this semester. So the project was looking at how systematic conservation of open space might work in the town. So I looked at 4 different land covers. So if we were to prioritize forest area, wetlands, areas considered priority habitat from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, as well as just in general non-developed areas. And then if we were to look at the largest parcels of forest land, for example, how would that look in Franklin? Or if we were to look at the least expensive parcels, what would that look like? What would the parcels look like? How would they be laid out in the selection process? And then finally, what would an optimal selection process look like? So knowing the areas or the parcels that offer the lowest cost per unit area, what would that look like? And I don't have a step-by-step plan of what I think the town should do going forward, but I think having CPA funds for open space and the acquisition of new open space areas should be on our radars going forward. So I emailed the final project to the emails that were available, posted on the town's website. And, yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Any questions from members of the committee?
No, I'll just briefly say this. Rose, you did this. I was very impressed with it, and I think we should all look it over. I mean, it's just some very valuable information. I thank you.
Thank you, and I'd be happy to share it, if anyone else.
Definitely
Would
love to
be.
see it.
Okay, sure.
Absolutely.
Rose, what made you decide to do this? What was the purpose behind
Yeah,
your
sure.
project?
Just in the last
So I'm
5
in
pages, I-
BU's statistics program, but my undergraduate degree is in environmental science and policy. So the course was called Data Science for Conservation Decisions. And for our final project, we could select any topic that we wanted to work on that applied to the class. So I thought that, what better way with the new, implementation of the CPA, I thought it would be an interesting way to apply what I had learned in class and then potentially make a tangible impact on my town.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
That's great.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you so much for sharing this with the community and with this board. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, very
thank you.
beneficial, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I got the email.
I missed the end of it, but, yeah. So, just in summary here, a question would be, Rose, what would your objective be? You did the report and everything for us.
Mm-hmm.
What did you have in mind?
Do you know, I think it's really hard to have just one objective. And I say that in the report that we can prioritize forest cover, right? But if we just prioritize forest cover, then we're leaving out wetlands or priority habitats. So I don't think there's not an easy answer, in my opinion. So I think all of the options that I've laid out, I don't think any of them is the perfect option.
Okay.
I think my intention here was more to get us thinking about how we can make our conservation efforts more systematic. Does that answer your question?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Jamie?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Does your analysis consider threat to development as a factor?
No,
Okay.
but I think if I had an infinite amount of time, I would definitely be interested in that because, oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, the main reason why I ask, Rose, is you may have found it, but if you haven't, you should look on the Conservation Commission's webpage. They actually, and it only is Chapter 61 parcels, so I can't speak about non-61, but you may want to contrast what you did with every 7 years we're required to do an open space plan by the state. One of the goals always in there is to evaluate the 61 parcels in town, and there was a fairly extensive process, and I think it used many of the criteria that you talked about tonight, and it also added in the threat of development, and I'd just be curious, if the same things line up, or if the threat of development is really a substantial factor or not in open space,
Yeah, and that's,
and whether it weighs it one way or the other.
yeah, we talked about that in class, like if you're protecting parcels that are not threatened, is that the best use of funds? Maybe, but maybe not if they're going to be okay, no matter who the owner is.
Well, you might want to look up that study. It may be interesting for you to read.
I will.
I know threat of development was one of the factors in that analysis. And it was done 6 years ago. Next year, this may be really helpful because the town has to start in 2023 our review of our open space plan. So we do in seven-year increments in which the state DCR looks at them. And so next year we start it. So we'd love to see your study. So thank you very much for
Yeah,
coming in.
Thank you.
That's great.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, great
Awesome.
job.
If there are no more questions from the committee, it looks like, Steve has his hand up.
Yes, Mr. Chair, Jamie's probably on it, but since Rose took the time to prepare that document, posting it to the committee page or someplace on the town so that it can be broadly shared and get the rest of the conversation continued with the rest of the public would be appreciated. Thank you.
Will do, Steve.
That sounds great. We appreciate that. Thank you.
All set? Yeah,
Yes, sir.
Peter Ballantyne, 8 Fanny Way, Franklin, Mass. Yeah, we're here, we don't want any money. We just want to, we want to be against this. Alan Earls came in last week with his plan to build a trail on Minebrook wetlands. So we're a couple of the abutters. There's 100 abutters along that area, and this trail system will go right behind our houses, and affect our security and privacy and everything, and the access to that is from like the Brookview condos. There's like 96 units there, and they can walk right out the door and use this trail system he wants to put in, all the way up to Beach Street, if you know where that is, right up by Pond Street, all the way up to Beach. And other than that, there's a little access, but those people will be able to walk out to this trail system, and there's a lot of, wildlife there and everything, it can disturb everything, They can be walking their dogs and get dog poo, litter. And we've had a couple of meetings before, we talked to them a couple of years before, with this deal. But, I think we're pretty much against it,
Okay.
So I just want to, let you know, if it's going to come up in the future,
Thank you. Jamie?
Just through you, Mr. Chair. So what I think Mr. Ballantyne's referencing is the Charles River Meadowlands
Yeah,
project.
the Meadowlands, yeah, right, yeah,
which
because
I
they have a
think-
big plan already in the works from before, they hired Beta. to
Yep,
draw
Beta
plans.
Consulting. So our state representative, Jeff Roy, he got a legislative appropriation some years back, and I'm mistaken, I want to say it's maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and there was a study done by Beta Engineering of how to try to connect and make, for lack of a better word, a boardwalk behind that area of the Charles River over near Pond, and then way back connecting up to Oak Street Extension in a variety of different spots through the federally owned swamp. One of the biggest issues to this is that I will there's many issues in terms of access, easements. I just wanted, for the committee, in terms of developing that project, there are some expensive pieces to it. But one of the biggest ones is to have access to the swamp is owned by the Army Corps of Engineers. And the Army Corps of Engineers requires that the community basically apply for a license to get in there, and there's an agreement in which the town picks up all the liability for any recreational access into that swamp. As most people probably know, that is not really a swamp. It's actually a flood control mechanism. That's why it's owned by the Army Corps of Engineers. That's why it's so large. Mr. Earls is correct, and same with Mr. Valentine. There is some incredible biodiversity in that area. And, you know, we have seen the study and the results, but given some of the other open space priorities that are in town that I think all of you are aware of from the many presentations we've given, you know, a lot of those other open spaces, you know, may be a higher priority to the committee in the future. I will say, as part of the plan, both Mr. Earls's comments and the reference point to the Charles River Meadowlands project, as well as these gentlemen comments, will all be part of that public record in terms of the public comments that are given. In terms of that first draft of the CPA plan, we don't want anybody's opinions, obviously, to be left out. And where this project falls in the pantheon of what we can buy, I don't know. That's obviously up for all of us to decide later on. But I just wanted to give a quick little background in case anybody was unaware of that study or what it was. And certainly I'll make sure that folks get a copy of it as a referential link at some point so you can look through the study yourselves.
Yeah, so there's a little access, you know, elsewhere, you know, other than that, in Brookfield, you know, they can, I think they got a little weird area where they can walk now, you know, and I think he wants to connect that all the way up, you know, and so they get the use of it, you know, but, you know, otherwise, you have to go through all the side streets like Dunham
Yeah.
Road, White,
Jimmy.
and up our way, you know, you can't even, you know, where are you gonna park, you know? You can't even park cars here, you know, how's, fire engines gonna get down here, ambulance are here, you know? So, you know, there's no access other than that, you know? I think they got like 2 spaces down there in the condo.
That's right. Yep, it's a couple spaces, yep.
Yeah, we never even were told about it, you know, we just got blindsided by this thing a couple of years ago, you know?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I just want to assure Mr. Valentine, you know, it's not like this project, there's a lot of legal hurdles to get through in terms of access and easements. This is not a project that we can spin around, you know, quickly. If the committee or others were in favor of it, you know, it's going to take a while. It's not something that's going to, I just want to assure you, it's not something that's going to pop up in July. You know, when the weather gets good, you know, all of a sudden you're going to see some boardwalk construction back there. Like, we're way far away from that.
Yeah, but a lot of the, you know, the residents out there never heard of it, you know, I've talked to people before, they had
Yeah.
no clue what this thing is, you know? So, you know, I don't know where they got the idea, you know, Mr. Earls, you know? So they just came down with this thing, and, you know?
One second, anything else?
I'm all
Jim?
set,
All right.
Mr. Chair.
Wayne?
Yeah, just from the gentleman, apparently, my impression is that you guys are concerned with the fact that there could be a large influx of people,
Absolutely, yeah,
which
sure,
would
yeah,
invade
this
your
is
privacy.
You know, everybody loves these trailers, you know?
Well, wouldn't that be something for the town council to, I mean, I mean, I know we are involved with different types of things with the environment and everything, but this seems like a matter for the council, and you say you have quite a lot of people already together
Yeah, well, we have a few.
supporting your,
We're like on the northwest side, you know, so we haven't talked to too many people down on the other sides, the lower end, you know?
yeah. So it sounds like something that, I don't know, Jamie, what's been your experience with this particular issue?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I just think that the size and the scope of a project like this is quite large in terms of generating the proper master planning of the whole project. I know that there's already been some of that groundwork has been done, but obviously, if there's neighborhood if there's neighborhood opposition, you know, that obviously makes the hurdles, you know, quite larger,
Right.
as I think you know, Wayne.
Yeah,
And so we're looking for projects that obviously have a greater consensus, I think, at least in these first couple years. But even a project like this, there again, I mentioned the Army, signing an agreement with the Army Corps of Engineers would, in all likelihood, require town council approval. If there were any other easements or gifts of land or something to put the puzzle together, would also require council action. So I just think it's a broader project than anything we're going to be able to do in the very near term. So I think these gentlemen are likely all set until some of those other issues are kind of smoothed over.
Yeah.
And I don't, and just so you're aware, there's been no effort on our office's part or the council's part to really move too far on this project at the Charles Meadowlands in my tenure here. Other than the analysis that was done by Audubon and Data with the state grant, you know, and a couple of outreach presentations I believe Mr. Earls made, there really hasn't been a lot more discussion about the project since.
Yeah, and my take on it would be this. We want to do stuff that's positive,
Right.
that the citizens approve. We certainly don't want to do stuff where we have hundreds of people in opposition. So that would be my stance on that.
There might be some private property there too, you know?
Pickleball
Yes.
may be a little more popular. I'm just guessing. I'm just guessing.
But I
Right.
Anything else, Wayne?
Well, I just don't, I wouldn't support a project that's going to interfere with people's homes and everything.
Yeah, we were afraid of security, you know, right off the bat, you know?
Yeah,
Saying, geez, where the hell are these trails going? To our backyard? Sellable,
I agree,
you know?
but that's a town council thing.
Any other questions or comments from members of the committee?
This is Alan Earls. I can't figure out how to raise my hand, but I'd like to just chime in for a second.
Sure, Alan.
Yeah, two things. One, no one in the neighborhood, and I used to live in that neighborhood, ever complained when that whole area was overrun with dirt bikes and illegal hunting. So I feel like there's sort of a bit of crying wolf going on here. A. B, contrary to what our town manager says, no, with all due respect, Jamie, there's no proposal to ever take over the land or its management from the federal government merely to allow people to walk in there, which they can already do legally. This doesn't change anything. And in terms of cost, probably for the cost of one pickleball court, you could accomplish almost the entire Meadowlands project, period. I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Jamie, did you have anything to add?
No, I think that on something like this with the Army Corps, I've spoken to them directly on numerous occasions about the swamp, and they told me I would need a license to get in there for access, and that's for boating. To Mr. Earls' point, I will say he is correct. In terms of hiking, no. But if there was ever access in terms of boating or wildlife viewing, if people were to get into boats, going into that swamp is not safe. It is not very safe all the time. And I just think that the town has to do its due diligence to make sure we're not creating a ramp for people to walk right in and go in there and put a boat in the water. And when you get out there, it can be a traumatizing experience. So I think we have to be careful of that. I have talked specifically to the Army Corps, and they've told me that we would need to accept the liability of the Meadowlands. But these are things probably Alan and I can talk about offline and probably aren't appropriate right now. So I can follow up with Alan and talk to him about what he's talking about.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? And I just had a question, follow up from what you were saying, Jamie. And so for easements or agreements with the Army Corps of Engineers, can CPC money even be used for that?
It could, well, you'd have to use it for acquisition, but I'd have to go back and check with Alan in the study to see exactly what pieces of land, if any, were needed in order to meet the vision of what he's looking for with the Meadowlands. Alan, do you have anything else you want to add to it in terms of what your view is and your vision of the 200? You said it's pretty affordable.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't want to drag this out, guys, because you're right, it should be conducted offline. But the town owns a whole lot of land around the federal land. And people already have access to that. People used to access it a lot more before the condominiums were built off of Pond Street. So it's not really a radical proposal, and there's no need to have parking in anywhere where nobody wants it. That's not part of the plan. It's like any other walking trail. It's like the Franklin Town Forest, which is used lightly. People can walk into it and look around and enjoy nature. It's the same sort of thing, except that because of all the development in our town, most of the access points have been obscured or acquired by private owners. So all I'm proposing, and all I've ever really proposed, is just protecting the few access points we have and making the public aware of them. Some of them are through Brookview per an agreement with that developer going back 20 years to ensure public access. So it's not really a matter of, I don't know, one could provide a useful public amenity without treading on Army Corps lands and without offending neighbors for very, very small money, in my humble opinion. Nobody wants to upset neighbors. It's just that it's an amazing property that people should take a look at. Take half an hour and go explore it, and you'll probably have a different view of it. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I disagree, absolutely disagree, You're gonna see people walking back and forth all over that place, from all those people down from that condos, man. Forget it, What's gonna be so hard about that? Just let it, leave it as it is, It's open space. We don't have to pay for it. Just leave it there, Leave it for the wildlife. Why do you have to go walk all over it for? So I just disagree with this guy.
Well,
Okay.
thank you very much for your input, and I
Thank
think
you, guys.
that's the value of these public hearings, is that we get to hear all sides and a variety of perspectives on these issues that affect our community. So thank you all for the input that you gave. So I don't believe there's anyone else in the audience who would like to say anything. Is there anyone else online who would like to say something?
Max?
Max.
Hello, my name is Maxwell Marangelo. I live at 127 Central Park Terrace, Franklin, Massachusetts. I don't have anything that prepared. I think there's two things that I want the committee to keep in mind. First is having a uniform way to evaluate the proposals before it. I think that there should be a consistent way to evaluate what the best course of action is going forward. And I think there should be, three of the criteria I think should be utility. So what does the most good, what gives you the most bang for the buck and does the most good for the residents of Franklin? There should be equality, making sure that it's not just a select few people who benefit, but it's the population as a whole. And the third is equity, making sure that the people who are sort of least granted opportunities in the town have access to them, and that people who might not normally benefit are able to benefit. And so I think that making sure that the benefits are equitably distributed, equally and equally distributed would be something that the committee should evaluate. The second thing is just personal, wish list is that you take a good look at both affordable housing and subsidized housing. I know it's a big ticket item. I don't know if there's enough money, CPA money, to do everything you want, but I just want you to at least take a look at it, including I'm curious if there's, if there's talk about Davis there and whether that can be used to have CPA funds used to renovate it for affordable housing. And I don't have an answer, I don't know, but I don't know if anyone has an answer about what that's something that could even be looked at. And with that, I yield. Thank you.
Thank you, Max. Jamie.
So through you, Mr. Chairman, just for an update, I can't remember if we talked about this at a committee meeting recently. We might have, we may not have. So regarding Davis there, just so everybody's aware, the school district still owns the property. We're going through and trying to work, I think the superintendent and the school committee right now are engaging the MSBA, which is the Mass School Building Authority. For those of you who have been around and watched our high schools and schools get built, it was through the MSBA. There's some paperwork and some T's that have to be crossed and I's that have to get dotted in terms of when you dispose of surplus property as a school district. There needs to be a report to the state, and there are some checks and balances in place so that school districts don't close schools and then try to build one the year after. Seriously, if you can believe it, people have tried to do that before. And so the MSBA looks for a series of criteria. The school certainly meets it, but we have to go through the formal, or the school district has to go through the formal process to make sure the MSBA, that there's no penalty on the backside down the road because an older school was closed. Once the school district is able to actually dispose of the property after the state approves it and all the other stuff gets done, then the school committee would take a vote of surplus property and bring, which would put the school and the property, the ball fields, the parking lot, everything, under the care and custody of the Franklin Town Council. To which then, on the town council goals for the next 2 years, assuming all those steps occur, then my recommendation to the town council will be to set up what's called the reuse committee. It's fairly standard procedure across the board, particularly out in these neck of the woods where a lot of around the 1900s, a lot of schools were built, and now they're obviously not being used anymore, or they're being used less frequently. And some of the challenges, just to put it out there, a couple of the challenges are going to be ADA access for any public facility in that building. If the building is not suitable for the educational needs of kids for an elementary school, then we have to ask ourselves, what then can it be used for that deal with children or the arts or other activities? And furthermore, the building is obviously not, it just simply is not suited for modern day workflow, life flow in general, in terms of the internet and a whole variety of other things. And so there's going to have to be a long, my view, probably a long, extensive conversation from the public about the costs and benefits of what to do with Davis Thayer. I've heard a lot about housing, but I think that's going to be a very, very difficult thing to do unless the town wants to give up the property to a private developer. When we did a cost analysis for the renovation of Davis Thayer maybe 5-6 years ago, you were looking at a renovation of $20 or $30 million. $10 million of that was ADA alone. Any private investment into housing, into that, any way to accomplish a housing project with Davis Thayer is almost certainly going to require private investment. And if private investment does not have control of the property, it's going to make it very difficult for private investment to occur. So one of the difficulties with housing is just that element. And so those are going to be issues that are going to be vetted out hopefully by a reuse committee in the next year or two, and to have a community conversation with ideas much like Max's, about what to do with that building and the property, by the way, a 3.5-acre parcel, into the future. So just give you a little primer for what's ahead. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Jamie. That was very helpful. Any comments or questions from the committee? Wayne?
Yeah, I have a special place in my heart for Davis Thayer, being the last graduating class. I see it as a very valuable location for the town of Franklin. My word, I mean, a public safety facility in that location, I think, would be fantastic. Presently, we have a public facility, police station that you basically have to give people directions to get to. Most of the towns I see around here, you have public safety is right in the main thoroughfare or whatever, and very accessible. They can get right to places very quickly. Again, it is a very valuable piece of property. It could be a recreation center, perhaps. I think the biggest mistake that could be made would be to sell the property. I think it's very valuable to the town of Franklin. And I really would commit to keeping that property. I'd like to see the building retrofitted for a public safety building. I think that would be fantastic. Again, location is very important. So, I just say that we're putting it off as being, oh, well, we'll do this. We'll have the reuse committee come along. It's going to cost 20 or 30 million for this. Well, we've built a number of schools over the years. We've torn down schools and made new schools where maybe we could have improved, just rebuilt this, or retrofitted that school, or made it better, brought the internet up to date and all that stuff, as opposed to knocking down the field house and all these other things. We built 3 high schools in 30 years, was it? Whatever it was. And that was questioned. But again, I think it's a very valuable piece of property. I'd hate to see it leave the town of the ownership from the town of Franklin.
Thank you, Wayne. Jamie?
Through you, Mr. Chair, obviously, we're far away from any extensive debate on the topic, but I just want to be for the record, I agree with Wayne. I can't project out a year, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10. Some reuse committees on schools never find a solution for a decade. But in terms of the overall location of that property, and I think the value for the quality of life and the civic life in Franklin is paramount. The ball fields that are there, the parking lot that's there, think of all the downtown activities, festivals, there's a lot of avenues to look at in terms of the potential of that school for a lot of different uses. And I only say the comments I mentioned really just to showcase that the housing issue is a really, really high hurdle to turn Davis Thayer into housing. That is going to be a very expensive property to develop. And number two, to Wayne's point, I think he will not be the only one. I think there will be a lot of people who will get into the community debate about whether to keep this property in the town's hands or not. And I think when they realize that it's very complicated for a housing project like that to get funded at that level, is going to make that even a more difficult choice for the community when they decide ultimately what to do with the Davis Thayer property. Oftentimes, many communities stall on these projects for a long time because there can't be consensus. So it's going to be a long and involved process for sure. And just by reference, 60 units, as all of you know, with Franklin Ridge, which is near the police station, right down the street, we have that 60 units of senior housing that's fully permitted. That's a $25 million project, brand new building, free land, and over $1 million of seed money from the town. So just to show you the scale of what it would take to retrofit a building like that for housing would be extraordinarily expensive. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. Anyone else? Well, thank you for extrapolating that more, and I'm sure our school committee and town council look forward to playing their respective parts in that conversation in the future. Is there anyone else online?
Yeah, I'll just say this real quick. I'd certainly volunteer for the reuse committee of Davis Thayer.
Absolutely. Is there anyone else in online attendance that would like to say something? I see.
Hi, Waven.
Susan.
Susan, okay, thanks. Very interesting conversation tonight. I wasn't able to come to the previous one. You guys are champs. I applaud all of you for volunteering to do this hard work. You've got a long road ahead, and let me just say at the beginning of my remarks instead of at the end, good luck, and everybody will be watching with great pleasure. You're not going to have any trouble at all, I imagine, getting a lot of great applications in this first year. I just want to say I have lived here since 1988, and I've been involved in a lot of conservation movements, including the open space plan that we did in 1998, a couple times ago, and met Alan in that process. I'm currently a member of the board of directors of Metacomet Land Trust, and our lands, I bought on two sides the parcel that the town bought last year that's between Lincoln Street and Maple Street. This end of town. I live on the same end of town, although I'm not a personal abutter. I just want to speak personally to say I was really active in helping adopt the CPA and getting the word out to the public. And I'm very proud that it's coming to this step in the process. I've read the application information that's online, and I want to give another shout out to Steve Sherlock and his buddies with Franklin Matters, because when I wanted to go and reread it today in preparation for joining you tonight. I couldn't find it on the CPC, on the town website, so I went back to Franklin Matters, and there it was. There was the link. So then I read it. I realize it's subject to change, right? I respect the process that the town will be going through, right? This is just a big first step. And we know it's going to end with the council. We know that you're going to have meetings with the applicants. You're going to be able to answer questions and ask people questions about their proponents, their projects that they're proposing. I really think that, especially since the town has now spent a big chunk of money for the property that we bought, partly with CPA funds and partly with the money from the Pond Street land sale, that was a brilliant project, right? It was an absolute home run. And I think we all have great hopes for how we're all going to work together as a community to make sure that there's safe access and people get to use it. So I really want, like Max, I really want to see money available for affordable housing in Franklin in your first year of projects. I think we all know that need really well, and I think the people at the Franklin Housing Authority, some of the other nonprofits in town, the churches are maybe proposing projects. I also agree that we have a lot of historic resources that need to be protected. And I hear the need for active recreation, and there's a dozen more open space projects, over the next several years that we all might bring forward to you. In this first year, I really think that the plan should focus on distributing so that some needs in each category are answered. Even tonight, you've heard about recreation, you've heard about history, you've heard about housing so far. And I don't know who else spoke in the previous meeting. I think that, as Max was just saying, it will help the public be part of the process if we all see the criteria and understand there's a community-wide goal involved in all the projects that get chosen. I think that the highest and the best process will really help everyone understand how our tax dollars are going to be spent. I also thought that it was good in your process outline that you've mentioned that letters of support from members of the public, agencies that might be involved, will be really important. And it was nice to see it called out so that anyone who's thinking of applying by February 28th, and I hope there are dozens, I really encourage everybody to look at the statute and understand what will make a good CPA project, that whoever's applying will be coming to the rest of us in the community, I think, asking for support. And that's a good thing. So please do give your support to a project that you think the town should take forward. And then the other thing is that process of what you do next after the proposals come in on February 28th will be really critical, because you're going to we, the town, will get better projects completed the more time we invest in helping people propose a good project and making sure that the estimates are right and the appropriate professional bodies have been consulted and that it meets the town's overall goals. And that it's doable with a pot of money that is finite. We still don't know for sure. We won't know until a year from now, I guess, in November, a year from November, right, Jamie? That what your actual total budget is going to be. So the projects have to be good, and you can help the proponents make their projects better. That's my point. But good luck. I think it's great. It's all exciting. It's great to hear that there's going to be some dialogue. You know, there's pluses and minuses. It's a public process. Good luck.
Thank you, Susan. Jamie, did you have something to say?
I just wanted to, Susan's right, the matching dollars come into town coffers in November, but I believe the estimate for what the town will receive will come in March from the state. So we will bank the FY23 budget based off of the amount we believe we'll raise locally, in addition to the state match estimate we'll get in just a couple months.
Excellent, thank you. Any questions or comments from members of the committee? Thank you, Susan, for your words of encouragement. We appreciate that. Is there anyone else online? I'm not seeing anyone. Okay. Well,
Everyone here good?
everyone,
They're all good. A lot of head nods.
excellent.
think
All
you're all
right,
set.
well, if there's nothing else, Jamie,
Can adjourn.
do we have a motion to adjourn?
Second?
Jamie, with members online, do we have to have a roll call, or?
Yes.
All right.
Yes, you do.
There we go. The clerk will call the roll.
Okay, Mr. Powell,
Aye. Yes.
Mr. Wilson? Yes. Ms. Doyle, yes?
Mixed up
Mr.
the committee.
McNeil?
Yes.
Ms. Phyllis?
Yes.
Mr. Dario?
Yes.
Mr. Samarian?
yes.
Thank you.
And Chris Feely, you
Oh,
got Chris?
I
You
thought
got
it
Chris?
was
Okay.
Mr. Feely?
Yes.
And Lisa?
And Ms. Lisa?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Good night, everyone.
Night.
Chris didn't say.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night, thank you.
Can I see the pickleball wizard?
Pickleball wizards, that's me.
Say it, people make jokes. Like one of the most common phrases is, "That's gay."
Yeah.
People say that. I hear that